Okay, so we're back on the KLR maintenance overhaul here, or just general maintenance, to be honest. And I did touch upon that the KLR. I'm not sure if this goes with the 650 or not, but the 250 was a pretty low interval maintenance schedule, meaning oil was to be changed every 500 miles, valve clearance checks every 500 miles. What we're going to be focused on here is cylinder head bolt and nut check every 500 miles, but that's also in my 10,000 kilometer check, which I'm working on right now. So that's, as far as oil goes, that's a pretty high or low interval for putting a quart and a half in oil in the thing and changing the filter. But what we're going to focus on here is the cylinder head bolt tightness and nut tightness. So this is the maintenance, I call it maintenance allocation chart or schedule. Of course, I had a really hard time finding the specs for the or even the how-to on the cylinder head bolts, but I did find in page 4.2, this is my Kawasaki KLR 250 service manual supplement. They did mention something in the base manual, but I doubt that would give information on how to actually torque these head bolts down or even check them. But I did find it. It was pretty buried here on page 4.2 in the exploded diagram. So that number T7 is actually a single cylinder head bolt if you trace it down into the hole. So there's one there, there's one here, there's one in this well, and there's one in this well. So I wanted to show you there's no way anyone did this every 500 miles, even if there was a warranty on this thing. It's absolutely no way. It would be astronomically expensive unless you were a full-blown factory supported race team. So I'm going to show you what's involved. Let's go take a look at that on the bike. Alright. Shut my fan down there. Alright, so that's a cylinder head bolt. And you can see there's an pressurized oil line over top of that. There's no way to get at that without removing that line. There's another one back there. And again, there's no way to get to that without removing that line. There's just no way to remove that oil line without removing the cams. So you have to index the engine, suspend the timing chain so it doesn't skip off the crank, remove both cams, remove the oil line, just to do that check. The only bolt that you can actually get to in any meaningful way is that one. And I even had to come up with a rig to do that. 14mm bolt. You can't even get to this one. No way. With that rocker in the way. Can't do it. So, back to the manual. Now mind you, this is every 500 miles. This is supposed to be done. 498 miles actually. Was that 800 kilometers? Yeah. Alright, so that's the oil line that has to be removed, and all 4 of these bearing caps on the cams, and our friend the camshaft itself, which I don't actually see in this exploded diagram, seems to be missing, as well as the chain. These 2 nuts, no problem. They're actually outside of the engine, not a problem. Everything else, yeah, pretty big problem. You're looking at, I would say, 4, with the valve cover off, to do the valve clearance check. I think you're looking at probably an additional 4 hours. I'm sure you could do it quicker if you rushed and didn't keep everything clean to blast the top those camshafts out, and just to torque those bolts. So I was able to get at the 1 bolt. And I'm using a pretty big torque wrench, honestly. It's a 1/2 inch because I'm an old truck mechanic. And that's the rig I had to come up with. I'd had to come up with an extension which is not rated for torque, an adapter, and a fairly shallow well sprocket just to rig that in there. There's a formula for how much extension, how much torque you lose per inch of extension. As I recall, tell me if I'm wrong, it's around a foot-pound per inch. So I dialed in an extra 3 foot-pounds for that contraption, and I did go ahead and make it click 3 times on this 1 bolt that I could get to, and it clicked without any movement, so it was absolutely in spec. I'm not going to tear these cams out of here. You'd probably do more damage taking them out of there just to check the torque on the head bolts. So appears to be in spec. I don't see any issue with the any leakage or anything that would tell me that those bolts are out of spec. But yeah, man, that's a very high maintenance issue, and again, these motorcycles were well ahead of their time. This was the cutting edge of 4-stroke technology when it came out, but the maintenance, a little bit of a bitch, especially if you follow the manual. I can pretty much guarantee you, no dealer did. You'd be probably within your first 5,000 miles, you'd probably have a bigger bill from the dealership if you followed the full maintenance schedule, if they followed through on this, than what you paid for the bike. And this was considered a dual sport bike, not a racing bike. Alright, so there you go. I forgot to mention I had a hell of a time finding the torque spec for this. I looked in the general maintenance charts, indexes, and I couldn't find it, but I just got to kind of learn how to read the manual here. If you see this, you can see a T7 indicated here. I'm not quite sure what the M stands for, to be honest with you. Then on the adjacent page is the index. So T is for torque. And there we go. 45 Newton meters, 4.6 kg per meter, or 33 foot-pounds. So that's what I used as my basis to add an extra 3 foot-pounds to my torque wrench to compensate for the extension. But yeah, not super easy to find in any other chart that was listed anywhere. One other thing I did find while paging through the chapter, I know I did go over the setting of the index marks for the valve check. I have seen some videos that said that these index marks on the cam gears should be facing each other, and I'm not sure if it makes a big difference or not, but the correct way, as per this manual, as what I found with what the manual said was to watch the intake valves go up and down, and then go about another third of a turn. And I did find that my index marks were facing away from each other, not perfectly level. You can see here they notate that that's about a 3-degree inclination from the flat edge of the top of the cylinder head to where you see the sideways T-mark on the flywheel lined up with this groove in the inspection cover. So there you go, as per the manual.